Hello, and in this video I'm going to take a look at the changes they've made to Zavod 3.11's Rush based on the feedback from the CTE servers. So the players have been giving their feedback as to what's worked, what hasn't worked, and they've made some pretty drastic changes to it from their original batch of changes. First, let's take a look at the MCOMs because they've changed on the first 3 bases. Sometimes only small changes, but they have all changed. So on base 1, A and B seem to be in the same position, but when you have a look at them in game, you'll see that they've changed. So the first thing you'll notice here is the in-game timer. So at the start of the round there's now a timer so that everybody is ready and everybody is loaded before the round starts. This means you don't get a few defenders and a few attackers with fancy machines getting to start first. Now if we go inside here, you can see that A has been moved back quite a bit. It's now towards the back of this building rather than the front, so the attackers actually have to get in and start working. And B has swapped sides. It's now on the right hand side of this little gap rather than the left, and that gives the MCOM a lot more cover, especially from the road and the hill across the other side. So on base 2, both MCOMs have moved as well. A has only moved slightly, B has moved quite dramatically. So if we head inside this building and take a look at A, you can see that all they've done is put it on the other side of the wall. So now it's in this hallway rather than in the room on the other side. This building used to be demolished at the start of the round, but because that caused graphic glitches, it's now up, and they've moved the MCOM out onto this semi-trailer outside, and they've extended this out of bounds on the left hand side so you can flank it. On base 3, A is in its same position, but B has moved backwards. The levolution at base 3 now happens at the start of the round rather than in the middle of the round, and what's happened inside is that objective B has been moved backwards into this area. So instead of being up at the other end where the levolution trigger was, it's now moved to the back of the building. A is still underneath this inspection pit, so that stayed in the same place. There's also been a bunch of vehicle changes. The first of these are for the transport helicopter. So that doesn't spawn at base 2 anymore, it now spawns at base 3, and it's only allowed inside the infantry combat area, so it can't jump ahead, so it can't go from base 3 to base 4 before the attackers are allowed to move. So that gives the defenders a bit more time to get set up. The main battle tank on base 1 for the attackers has now been replaced with an MRAP. So they've lost the tank and got the armoured Jeep. On base 2, the Amtrak has been replaced with an infantry fighting vehicle, and they've said this is to make it less effective, but I think the infantry fighting vehicle is probably more effective than an Amtrak, or that's just the way it seems to be playing out. The defenders have now got some armour. They get a battle tank at base 3. They also get one at base 4, but now they've got one at base 3 so they can at least fight back against the attackers' armour. So those are the MCOM and vehicle changes, which are the things you notice most, but they have made a lot of other changes. They've moved the attacker flags on all the bases. So this specifies where the attacker's base is, and they've done this so that an opposing commander trying to sweep the attacker's base isn't going to get any results. They've also fixed the bug with the defender spawns where you could spawn outside of the combat area. The levolution on this map is now automatically triggered at the beginning of the round, so that doesn't interfere with anything anymore. And that building at base 2 that used to be destroyed but is now back standing, that's because it used to cause graphical glitches like in my last video where to me it just appeared invisible. They've either moved or removed most of the emplaced anti-tank weapons on base 2 and base 3, and that's because the MCOMs have shifted, and they've removed the grenade launcher pickup that was at base 3. They've also changed a couple of the combat areas. So the defender combat area on base 3 has been extended backwards. So the defenders, when they're told to pull back, can actually pull back further towards base 4. And the attackers at base 4, their combat area is now slightly wider. So that's allowed the helicopter a bit more of movement and allow the attackers to flank a bit better. So that's pretty much all the changes they made to Zavod in this second round of changes. And I have to say, it has made a difference. Base 1 and Base 2 now play much better. They're actually very even. So I know their objective was to make Base 1 easy for the attackers. I think Base 1 and Base 2 are pretty much 50-50. Maybe Base 2 is actually the easier one for the attackers rather than Base 1. Base 3 and Base 4 are pretty much hit and miss, and it tends to come down to if the attackers have a good helicopter pilot, especially on Base 4. On Base 3 it's handy if the helicopters can survive and get people to the roof so they can drop down. Camping doesn't do you any good on the roof, but being able to drop down onto the objectives is very handy. On Base 4, having a helicopter pilot who can stay within bounds, stay alive, and get people on top of the tower, that's pretty important. The defenders now have to think a lot more about going onto the top of the tower and defending that, but then you're vulnerable to the minigun. But being able to drop down anywhere you want onto this map is really handy, and you can get back there pretty quick. So if the helicopter is up and manages to stay up, Base 4 is much easier. The attackers definitely have more of a chance now. On the whole, I think these changes to Zavod for Rush are really good, and this is pretty much an ideal Rush map now. I think if they can get this standard on all the Rush maps when they redo them, then we're going to have a lot of fun. I know it's only going to be the base maps, but that's going to open it up to the widest number of players, and I think Rush will become a popular game mode again.